The city was alive with its usual chaos, pedestrians rushing to catch cabs, street vendors shouting over the din, and the distant hum of construction reverberating through the air. Amid the bustle, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided smoothly down the main thoroughfare. The car, a symbol of untouchable luxury, moved with an air of effortless dominance. Inside, Donald Trump sat in the back seat, engrossed in reviewing documents for his next high-profile meeting. The soft leather seats and quiet hum of the car offered a stark contrast to the cacophony outside. Trump glanced briefly out the window, scanning the street's ceaseless motion. He was accustomed to observing life in passing, brief glimpses of people and places that rarely stayed in his mind, but something about today felt different. As the car approached a busy intersection, his eyes landed on a young girl huddled against a building's cold facade. She was small and fragile, wrapped in a tattered blanket that did little to shield her from the brisk autumn air. Her head was bowed, her face obscured by unkempt hair, and her thin frame spoke volumes of hunger and hardship. The girl was invisible to the world around her. Commuters passed by without a glance, their lives too full to acknowledge hers. Yet in that fleeting moment, she became the center of Trump's attention. He couldn't look away, his curiosity ignited by her solitude amidst the chaos. "Stop the car," Trump said, his voice cutting through the silence. His driver, accustomed to strict schedules, hesitated. "Sir, we're expected—" "Stop the car," Trump repeated, his tone more insistent this time. The Rolls-Royce came to a halt, the sudden motion rippling confusion through the motorcade. Horns blared as impatient drivers behind the convoy expressed their frustration. But Trump didn't seem to notice. His focus remained on the girl, and for the first time in years, he felt an inexplicable urge to break away from his routine. As his security detail scrambled to assess the situation, Trump opened the door and stepped out, his polished shoes landing firmly on the cracked pavement. The city seemed to pause. Heads turned, and whispers began to ripple through the crowd. "What's going on?" a passerby murmured, craning their neck to catch a glimpse of the unfolding scene. Unbothered by the growing attention, Trump began walking toward the girl, his every step measured but resolute. Behind him, his security team trailed, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. This was not a planned stop. It wasn't in the itinerary. For the girl on the sidewalk, the world remained the same, cold, indifferent, and unforgiving. She didn't notice the commotion around her, but her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The convoy screeched to a halt, a jarring interruption to the rhythmic hum of the bustling city. Traffic, once fluid and indifferent, came to a standstill as the imposing motorcade disrupted the normal flow. Pedestrians turned their heads in curiosity, their conversations faltering as they tried to piece together the cause of the sudden stop. It was not every day that such a commanding fleet of vehicles, led by a Rolls-Royce Phantom, broke formation in the middle of a crowded street. Inside the lead vehicle, Trump's expression hardened with resolve. "Stop the car," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for debate. His lead aide, glancing nervously at the clock, tried to intervene. "Sir, we're running behind schedule. The meeting Trump's sharp gaze cut him off mid-sentence. "I said stop." The weight of his words reverberated in the vehicle, silencing any further objections. Outside, the sudden halt sparked a ripple of whispers among onlookers. Some raised their phones, capturing the moment in hopes of unraveling the mystery later. The security team, caught off guard, exchanged tense looks as they sprang into action, scanning the area for potential threats. Time seemed to stretch thin as Trump's door opened with a deliberate motion. A collective hush fell over the crowd, the usual city clamor fading into an almost eerie silence. For a moment, the world felt suspended in anticipation, all eyes on the man stepping out of the sleek, black car. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, Trump's presence commanded immediate attention. Yet there was something different about him in that moment. The aura of power and authority that usually surrounded him now softened, replaced by an air of introspection and purpose. His every move was measured, his focus unshakable as he scanned the sidewalk ahead. There she was, a small figure sitting huddled on the cold pavement. The girl, barely in her teens, clutched a worn blanket around her shoulders, her face streaked with dirt, but bearing an expression of quiet resilience. Beside her lay a cardboard sign scrawled with shaky handwriting. hungry and cold. Please help. As Trump took his first step toward her, the whispers in the crowd grew louder. Some looked on in awe, others in disbelief. A man of his stature, with his carefully guarded schedule and layers of security, stepping out for someone who the world had seemingly ignored? It was unheard of. The murmurs faded as Trump moved closer, his strides purposeful yet unhurried. He exuded a gravity that silenced onlookers, as if the weight of this moment had rendered words unnecessary. His towering frame, once symbolic of unyielding confidence, now radiated something more profound, an unmistakable compassion that seemed to ripple outward, touching everyone who witnessed it. As he reached the girl, he stopped, towering above her small, fragile form. For a moment, she didn't notice him, her gaze fixed on the ground as if expecting the world to pass her by as it always did. Then, sensing his presence, the girl remained motionless, curled into herself as though trying to disappear from the world around her. She seemed invisible to the bustling crowd, just another shadow on the streets. Her tiny frame, wrapped in a tattered blanket, told a story of silent suffering. As Trump knelt in front of her, it was as if two entirely different worlds collided. The polished world of power and wealth meeting the raw reality of despair. He crouched slowly, mindful of not startling her, and his towering frame seemed to shrink in humility as he got on her level. "What's your name?" Trump asked, his voice softer than anyone expected, the commanding tone replaced by one of genuine care. The girl flinched at first, her small body stiffening. Slowly, she raised her head, her sunken eyes meeting his. There was something in her gaze, fear, confusion, but also a flicker of hope, as if she was trying to believe this wasn't just another moment where someone noticed her and walked away. "Emily," she whispered, her voice almost drowned out by the noise of the city. Trump nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Emily, what are you doing out here?" Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. I don't have anywhere else to go," she finally admitted, her voice cracking under the weight of her words. "My parents, they're gone. I don't have anyone anymore." The words hung in the air, heavy with pain. For a moment, Trump didn't speak. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw the depth of her struggle. Her ragged clothes and tear-streaked face told a story of loss and survival, but her eyes told a different story, a quiet resilience, a strength that had kept her alive despite everything. "You're too young to be out here alone," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This isn't where you belong." Emily's small hands tightened around the edge of her blanket. "Where else can I go?" she asked, her voice trembling. Trump paused, his expression softening even more. "We're going to change that," he said, his words carrying both promise and certainty. At that moment, the city seemed to fade into the background. It wasn't about the man in the suit or the girl on the sidewalk. It was about the connection between two people, one who had the power to help and the other who desperately needed it. A small crowd began to gather, their murmurs growing louder as they watched the unexpected scene unfold. But Trump didn't notice them. His focus was entirely on Emily, and in that moment, she wasn't just a homeless girl. She was a human being, someone who mattered, someone worth fighting for. As he gently placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, Emily's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel invisible. Someone had seen her, truly seen her, and for the first time, she allowed herself to hope that her life could change. Trump lowered himself onto the pavement beside Emily, his tailored suit brushing against the cold, rough concrete. It was a gesture that surprised everyone. The man who often stood above the world, now sitting eye to eye with a child who had been forgotten by it. Around them, the city pulsed with life, but in this moment, it felt as though time itself had paused. "Tell me about yourself," he urged gently, his voice shedding the weight of authority and taking on the warmth of genuine concern. Emily glanced at him cautiously, her grip tightening on the frayed edges of her blanket. She wasn't used to people asking her anything, let alone listening to her answers. But there was something in his gaze, something steady and sincere, that gave her the courage to speak. I used to go to school," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I liked reading and writing. My teacher said I was good at it. But then," her words faltered, her small shoulders sagging under the weight of the memories. Then my parents, they're gone now. I had nowhere to go. I tried staying with some people, but they didn't want me, so here I am. Her words came out in fragments, but they painted a picture that was all too clear. A life derailed by tragedy, a child forced to navigate a world that had no place for her. Trump listened intently, his usual brisk demeanor replaced by an unusual stillness. "You've been through more than anyone your age should have to endure," he said finally, his voice heavy with emotion. "But even in the middle of all this, you're still here. That says something about you, Emily. It says you're a fighter." Emily looked up at him, her wide eyes reflecting a mixture of vulnerability and curiosity. "I don't feel strong," she admitted. Trump shook his head gently. "Strength isn't about never feeling weak," he said. "It's about getting back up when life knocks you down. And you've been getting back up every single day, even when the world hasn't given you a reason to. That's strength, Emily, and it's something no one can take away from you." The words seemed to reach her, softening the hard edges of her expression. For the first time, she allowed herself to speak about the things she missed, not just food and shelter, but the intangible parts of her life that had been stolen from her. "I miss school," she said quietly. "I wanted to be a teacher one day, like Miss Green. She always said I could be anything I wanted." Trump nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. "And she was right," he said. "You still can. Life has a way of pushing us off course. But that doesn't mean we can't find our way back. Sometimes we just need a little help." Emily looked at him, a flicker of hope crossing her face. "Do you really think so?" "I don't just think so, I know so," Trump replied firmly. "But you shouldn't have to do it alone. You deserve a chance to dream again, to have the kind of life you've been fighting for." As he spoke, the crowd around them grew larger, their murmurs softening as they watched the unlikely scene unfold. People weren't just seeing a man in a suit and a girl on the street. They were witnessing a moment of connection, a reminder of what it meant to truly care for another human being. Trump reached out and placed a steady hand on Emily's shoulder. "You're stronger than you know, Emily, but strength alone shouldn't be what keeps you alive. Let's make sure you don't have to fight this battle by yourself anymore." Emily's eyes welled up with tears, not from sadness, but from the unfamiliar feeling of being seen, of being valued. For the first time in a long time, she felt like her dreams weren't just distant memories. They were possibilities. As the crowd looked on, Trump's towering presence softened, and what followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Kneeling beside Emily, he spoke with a kindness that transcended the noise and chaos of the city. "You've endured so much, but this moment is the beginning of something better," he said, his tone resolute yet warm. Trump turned to his security team and gave clear, unwavering instructions. "Make sure she's taken care of," he said. "Find her a safe place tonight. Connect her with people who can help her rebuild her life." Within moments, his team was on their phones, arranging for food, shelter, and a warm bed for Emily. But Trump didn't stop there. Reaching into his pocket, he handed her a small card with a handwritten note. "This is my direct contact. If you ever feel stuck, lost, or in need, call this number. You're not alone anymore." Emily clutched the card like a lifeline, her hands trembling. Tears welled up in her eyes, not just from the kindness she was receiving, but from the realization that someone powerful and influential saw her as more than a statistic or a fleeting problem. "What's your dream, Emily?" Trump asked, his gaze unwavering. I want to be a teacher," she whispered, barely audible. Trump smiled, his expression one of genuine encouragement. "Then that's exactly what you'll be. I'll make sure of it." He made a promise, not just to provide for her immediate needs, but to support her long-term dreams. He assured her that she would have access to education, mentorship, and the tools to create a future she could be proud of. But it wasn't just the material help that left an indelible mark. It was his words. "Remember this, Emily," Trump said, his voice carrying both authority and empathy. "Your circumstances don't define you. Your courage does, and you have more of it than most people I know." The crowd, initially skeptical, was now moved by the sheer humanity of the moment. Some captured the scene on their phones, while others stood in reflective silence. It was more than an act of charity. It was a demonstration of how one small act of compassion could reignite hope in a life that had almost given up. As Emily was escorted to a nearby car to take her to a shelter, Trump stood for a moment, watching her go. "Take care of her like she's one of our," he instructed his staff. To the onlookers, it was a moment they would never forget. And for Emily, it was the day her life took a turn for the better. Not just because of the resources she received, but because someone believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. This act of kindness became a reminder to the world. No matter how high you've climbed, the measure of greatness lies in how you lift others. By evening, the moment had gone viral. Videos of Trump kneeling beside Emily flooded social media, captivating millions across the globe. The rawness of the interaction, the juxtaposition of immense power meeting vulnerability, struck a chord that transcended political affiliations and personal beliefs. The comments under these videos revealed a spectrum of reactions. Many praised the compassion displayed, calling it a reminder of the humanity we all share. Others, however, viewed the gesture with skepticism, questioning whether it was a staged act. Yet amid the debates, the real impact of the moment began to emerge. The focus wasn't on Trump alone, it was on what his actions had sparked in others. Donations to homeless shelters surged overnight, as ordinary people felt compelled to make a difference. Volunteers, some who had never set foot in a shelter before, arrived in droves, eager to help. Social media timelines filled with heartwarming anecdotes of kindness, as individuals shared how the story inspired them to reach out to those in need. The story wasn't just a fleeting headline, it became a call to action, a reminder that even in a fast-moving world, stopping to acknowledge another person's pain can create waves of change. Months passed, and Emily's world was no longer defined by cold pavements and silent despair. Her life had undergone a remarkable transformation, like a caterpillar emerging from its cocoon into a butterfly. Placed in a loving foster home, Emily now woke up in a warm bed, surrounded by a family that truly cared for her. The once overwhelming void in her life was slowly being filled with stability, support, and hope. She began attending school regularly, a luxury she once only dreamed of. Initially, it was daunting. Her past had taught her to shrink into the background, to avoid being noticed. But with every passing day, her confidence grew. Teachers saw her potential and nurtured it, while classmates admired her quiet determination. Emily quickly became known for her resilience and dedication, excelling in her studies and earning praise for her efforts. The frightened girl who had once clutched a tattered blanket on a busy city sidewalk was now a vibrant young woman with a spark in her eyes. Her days were no longer consumed by survival, but by dreams of a brighter future. She developed a passion for learning and often stayed up late reading books that transported her to worlds she never imagined. Yet through it all, she never forgot the man who had changed her life with a single act of kindness. Trump's words echoed in her mind like a guiding light. "You're stronger than you think. Let's change that." She held on to that moment, drawing strength from the memory whenever she doubted herself. Emily vowed to make the most of the second chance she had been given. She volunteered at shelters on weekends, offering hope to others who were still struggling. "I was where you are," she would say, her voice steady with conviction. "And someone believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. You can rise above this too." Her transformation became a symbol of hope in the community. People who had followed her story marveled at her journey, inspired by her courage to rebuild her life. Emily's resolve to succeed wasn't just about honoring the chance she was given, it was about creating a ripple effect, helping others believe that they too could overcome their circumstances. As Emily stood at the threshold of her future, she realized her dreams were bigger than she'd ever imagined. The girl who once felt invisible was now determined to be a voice for the voiceless, a beacon of hope for those in darkness. And in her heart, she carried a deep gratitude, not only for the man who had stopped for her, but for the opportunity to become someone who could stop for others. For Trump, the encounter with Emily was more than a passing moment. It became a profound marker in his life, one he often revisited in quiet reflection. Long after the media frenzy had subsided and the world had moved on, Emily's story remained etched in his mind. In moments of solitude, her resilience and vulnerability served as a poignant reminder of life's fragility and the immense power of small actions to create waves of change. In private conversations with close friends and family, Trump spoke openly about how deeply the experience had touched him. "You know," he said one evening, leaning back in his chair, "we chase so much: wealth, influence, recognition. But when I looked into that girl's eyes, I saw something I'll never forget. It wasn't just despair, it was the strength to keep going, even when the world had given her nothing. That kind of strength, it humbles you." He didn't view the encounter as a grand or extraordinary gesture. In his eyes, it was simply the right thing to do. Stopping wasn't about making a statement or being seen, he explained during a small gathering. It was about being human. If we can't pause our own lives, even for a moment, to help someone in need, then what's the point of all the success we're chasing? It's hollow without purpose. This introspection began to subtly influence the way he approached his work and his role in the public eye. He became more attuned to the stories of everyday people, the struggles they faced, and the resilience they showed. In meetings, he started advocating for initiatives aimed at addressing homelessness and poverty, often citing Emily's story as a reason to act. "It's not just about policies or program," he would say. "It's about people, real people, with real lives and real potential, if only we give them a chance." The experience also deepened his belief in the ripple effect of kindness. "One moment can change everything," he said during an interview months later. "Not just for the person you help, but for everyone who sees it, hears about it, or feels inspired by it." Emily wasn't the only one who was transformed that day. I was too. Trump's reflection wasn't limited to words. It became evident in his actions. He discreetly funded shelters, supported education programs for underprivileged children, and frequently reminded his team to prioritize projects that would leave a meaningful impact. Though he rarely spoke publicly about the encounter, preferring to keep the moment personal, those close to him knew it had sparked a shift. Emily's resilience had not only inspired Trump, but had also reignited his own sense of purpose, reminding him of a simple yet profound truth. Greatness isn't measured by wealth or power, but by the lives you touch and the difference you make. Years later, Emily stood under the dazzling lights of a packed charity gala. The room was alive with energy, filled with people eager to support her cause, advocating for homeless youth and creating opportunities for those often overlooked. The transformation in her life was evident, not just in her poised demeanor or the elegant dress she wore, but in the unwavering conviction in her voice. She took a deep breath, scanning the audience. Among the many faces, her eyes landed on Trump, sitting quietly near the front, a proud but modest smile on his face. The man who had changed her life with a single act of kindness was here to witness the impact of that moment in its fullest bloom. "When someone stops to help you," Emily began, her voice resonating through the hall, "it's not just about what they give you. It's about how they make you feel. They make you feel seen when the world seems blind to your struggles. They remind you that you're valued, even when you've started to doubt your own worth. And most importantly, they help you see that you're capable of more. More than the hardships, more than the labels, and more than you ever dared to dream." Her words hung in the air, drawing nods and murmurs of agreement. She shared how that single encounter had not only lifted her off the streets, but had also ignited a purpose within her. Emily spoke of how she now worked to provide shelter, education, and hope to thousands of homeless youth, ensuring they too would have a chance to rewrite their stories. Trump watched her with quiet pride, knowing that his simple decision to stop that day had been the catalyst for all this. His act had set off a chain reaction, a ripple effect that continued to grow, reaching countless lives in ways he could never have predicted. The audience erupted into applause, moved by Emily's journey and inspired by her message. But as the applause faded, Emily leaned into the microphone, her voice warm and earnest. "I'm standing here today because someone chose to care, and now I'm asking you to do the same. Whether it's lending a hand to someone in need, volunteering your time, or even just sharing this story, every action counts. Together, we can create a world where no one feels invisible." She paused, her eyes glistening with emotion. "If this story touched your heart, I encourage you to share it. Let's inspire others to take that one small step that could change a life. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our journey of kindness and change. Every click, every share, and every voice adds to this ripple effect. Let's keep it going. The room filled with applause once more, but this time it was joined by the sound of phones buzzing, guests sharing the story in real time, spreading Emily's message far and wide. The moral of the story was clear. One act of kindness, no matter how small it seems at the time, has the power to transform lives and inspire a wave of goodness across the world. It's a reminder to us all that in a fast-paced, often indifferent world, the choice to pause and care can create ripples that echo forever.